Well, Bill, I appreciate you hopping on. Why don't you give us a quick intro on kind of who you are and who you serve?
Absolutely. So my name is Bill Sickens, and do a couple of different things in life. My primary occupation is a software designer, robotics, that kind of a thing, and I've done that all my life. I also host what was a radio show, now a podcast. Actually, it's both since 2013, called User Friendly or User Friendly 2.0, as it is now. So those are my two primary occupations in life. Although I tend to do a lot more in the realms of gaming and cosplay and some of the things we're going to talk about today.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working together for like 7, 8 months, I think, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Nice. So talk to me way back then about kind of what made you want to get started. Because I know actually we met on Matchmaker, which is not a dating site. It's for podcasts.
No,
It's for
it's
hosts and
important to point
guests.
that out, isn't it?
Yes. I think it's a horrible name, but it's a cool platform for podcast hosts to find guests and guests to find hosts. So that's how we met. We actually met via User Friendly 2.0, and then you kind of reached out to me afterwards. So why don't you kind of talk us through what happened there?
Well, basically, after we did our interview and I kind of found out a little bit about what you were doing, it plugged right into what I am and what I needed. I needed to lose weight. I mean, I knew that. And at the end of the day, it was a situation where I've tried to a few times over the years, never had much success. And like many gamers, I'm a bit sedentary. That's the lifestyle. And as a programmer, that even adds to that. And I wasn't doing a lot to where I had a lot of motion. But the problem is in the past when I've tried dieting and exercise and all this kind of thing, it's always been, well, completely change your life 180 degrees and then you might lose weight. And then usually that doesn't work. And then when it did a little bit, I usually gained it back quite quickly. It just wasn't easy to deal with or even really possible to maintain. So at the end of the day, it was like, okay, this is very disillusioning. And then we talked and I said, this is something that's going to be worth a try. And then I had an added little incentive that right around that time I met some amazing people that have a company that has a real life Ironman type jetpack or jet suit as it is called, and had the opportunity to come check this thing out and was invited to England to do that. So when you and I first started working together was about March of 2024. And when this came into being was about April of that year when I started talking to him and actually getting, that this was going to be the case. Well, why don't you come out next month? No, I think, let me come out in September, you know. So I had a little time to get things right. And then that really created a motivation to need to lose weight because it would have been somewhat embarrassing if I couldn't get into the air because the jet wasn't powerful enough or something, which wouldn't have been the case. But you have to be within a certain weight range for it to be safe and to be able to function properly, and that's what that was.
Yeah, and I also believe we had 4 months until you were going on your initial trip, right, for the flight. And our goal was, if I remember correctly, you wanted to lose 20 pounds, which that's, roughly 5 pounds a month, which is just over a pound. It's like a pound and a quarter a week, which is very reasonable. And I know you were also pretty skeptical because you've said you've tried everything in the past and stuff like that. So kind of talk me through those initial kind of hesitancies and thoughts.
Well, and again, it's after you try something enough and it doesn't work, you're going to be somewhat skeptical on whether it's ever going to. And in my situation, it was there were times that there was one diet I went on that I just felt terrible because the change in the food, I just felt like I couldn't function like that. And one of the things I know that we've done is your setup has a way to be able to not have to throw your life completely upside down to lose weight, and that really helped. It didn't require a nuts and twigs diet and all of that type of a thing, to be able to get there. So yeah, like you say, originally the goal was to lose 20 pounds, greatly exceeded that. And it seemed like a lot of what made that work was being able to change my lifestyle, adopt what we were doing in a way that it didn't overtake everything else, but was still doable, and all of that. Like I say, at the end of the day, it really worked. And I was down a lot more than 20 pounds when we got to the end of that. It was more like, I think, 45 or something at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I think when you went on your initial trip, it was closer to like 35, but now you said you lost just over 50, right?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of that now too. So yeah, it's it's getting there, and it's just continuing to do the right thing. And we've switched into more of a maintenance mode, I know, over the last few months, but it still helps, and it still keeps you on track. And what I'm finding is the amount of weight I'm losing now is less than I was all at once before, obviously, and that's probably a good thing because it would come to a point where that could be a problem, although I don't think I'm going to have that. But the thing is at the end of the day, it's not even just that I've plateaued. I'm still able to do that. And some of the other things I'm working on now is toning up and these type of things that go along with that. So the weight loss isn't the only goal anymore, but it's still part of it, and it's still something that's proven to be successful.
Yeah, and like you said, we needed to shift gears a little bit because of the holidays, more trips, more chaos. I believe you had a pretty busy December as well as January. So kind of shifting gears is necessary to be successful and sustainable. But let's take a step back. What did we do? Because you mentioned how things were easier to implement into your lifestyle. What did we do starting off to help kind of reintroduce some of these healthy habits that maybe you
Well,
haven't
I
done in
think
a while?
part of it was coming up with a system that fit into what I like to do, and having the concept from being a gamer and relating to that really did help. We're looking at some things. Okay, this is kind of cool. I can figure this out. I think and it made it a lot of fun for one thing. So it wasn't just the do this and do that and see me in 6 years type thing, which I'd experienced in the past. So starting out with that made it work a lot better. We were able to put together a diet, food that was based around the idea of stuff that I was already doing. We made some changes, changing portion sizes, that kind of a thing, but it didn't end up being that I couldn't eat what I like. I mean, I still do, and just maybe not as much. It also saved me a ton of money because one meal became two and in some cases three,
Yeah.
but that was a big part of it. So it was integration of being able to say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. You provided an outline that worked. You provided, you have a software that actually really does help with this too, to kind of track everything in a way that's easy to do. So and I have a Fitbit watch and that interfaced with it. So that helps with some of these things. And just at the end of the day, it was a very reasonable setup that was very easy to incorporate into what I was already doing. We looked at the schedule, figured out when I could do some exercise, put together a plan for actually everything down to grocery shopping properly and what to do from that standpoint, setting up food so that it's accessible and available. So I'm not grabbing crap because I can grab something good, which actually makes a big difference because when you're busy in the middle of the day, you're not going to have time to cook a meal, so I would either end up getting fast food or, grabbing something in the fridge, which was generally, a piece of a week old pizza or something. And none of those things work into a diet. So, But I want to emphasize that what we didn't mean that I could never have the pizza or the fast food. It just was how you dealt with it. And you sit here, I mean, I can't say anything else other than it obviously works because it did. I'm on no medication. I haven't had to do anything else other than just get myself into a proper mindset, which is exactly what your system did. And going through that, to answer your question, it's just incorporating it, having something that was easy to follow, having something that was I could reference when I needed to, and having the availability of the stuff to do that really made a difference.
Nice. I like that. And I mean, obviously, that's what we try to do with our clients is try to have that sustainable approach. And I know when we first started working, and probably still now, you said that lunch work meetings are relatively common. And so I know one thing we had to navigate was how can we still have that sustainable nutrition while also navigating eating out. And what did we come up with?
Well, there were a couple of things. Number one was choice of places and all of that kind of a thing when it was an option. So the second part of it is to order a meal, put half of it away, which is something that I still do, which works quite well. So they look at you a little funny. Oh, thank you. Can I have my to-go box now? But that's how you do it, right? So it's and it works. There's like one restaurant around here that a lot of the business people go to and I like, and it's an Italian restaurant called Spaghetti Factory. Beautiful place. But I've been told that spaghetti and meatballs probably doesn't fit into a diet too well. It's just carbs and fat and all the rest of it, right? And they're some of the cleanest Italian food I've had, but it still is that type of a thing. Well, still go have that. I mean, Mondays we usually do a business meeting there, but I take most of it home with me now. And I've been finding as time has gone by, I don't eat as much either. If I tried to eat a full portion, I think I would get sick at this point, which I could easily have done a year ago. But just putting it away before you start the meal, you're not tempted because it's in a box. It's not there. So that is one big thing that has helped. And then the second part of it is being able to figure out a way, which we did, to be able to keep doing the work balanced because I needed to do that. And like you say, meet with clients and all these kind of things. And that's usually a lunch out and just think it through a little bit. Some of the other things that I changed on that too is I quit drinking soda pop. So that's no big deal. You can go to any restaurant and get a water. They have it, at least as far as I know. I haven't run into one that doesn't. So, or tea or coffee or something, but something that's not so high in calories. And that was another thing that surprised me when I started logging all this stuff is how much of my caloric intake was through drinks. It's hiding in there, but it is. And it's like the idea of, I still occasionally will have a soda pop, but not like I used to. And I've been finding it's like your taste changed because it's become a little bit too sweet almost in some ways. But at the end of the day, you 200-300 calories in a meal would be one soda. And as we all know here in the States, well, you get refills and all that. And, so you don't just have one soda, and the one you have is like huge. And, so going from there, that also helped a lot too. But being able to figure out a way to manage that and still be able to do what I need to do, it was real beneficial. And then, like I said earlier, it saved a lot of money because that second, what you take home is a second meal. So you're not having to buy that food again.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say that's your lunch for tomorrow, right? So there's like two things there that I like to really emphasize is the cutting your meal in half, right? Normally I'll say eat your sides because those tend to not save well. Cut your entree in half, put it in a to-go box, and like you said, you got your next meal or your meal for tomorrow. And so, right, you're cutting your costs in half. And then also kind of a cardinal rule that I have is don't drink your calories because as you've noticed, those creep up very quickly. And so the only exception to that would be like maybe a protein shake if needed, if you need something that's a little bit more grab and go. But if you're having 1 to 2 to 3 like cups or glasses of soda, or if you're from the Midwest, pop, that's going to be upwards of like 1,000 calories. And so that could quite literally be the difference between weight loss and weight gain. And so switching to water, like you said, tea, the 0-calorie alternative is a great way to cut those calories out without actually changing your behaviors.
I think having the knowledge of this helped me a lot too, because we talked about it and I started actually keeping track. And that's when I started realizing that, okay, this is, where this is coming from, where this is coming from kind of thing. And at the end of the day, that did make a huge difference. And like you say, it's a matter about what you're doing. And as far as the sides go, I like my French fries, and stuff. But I have started to minimize that and do some different things along those lines. But I haven't had to completely cut it out. And I've still been quite successful.
Yeah, and it's all about moderation. And French fries are great, but then you can also maybe in the next meal have a side of whatever veg medley they have, and then kind of like alternate and have that proper moderation.
So, yeah, and that makes sense. And get the small instead of the large. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do like that. You don't notice it either. And like you say, sides don't go home well, especially fried stuff like that. So you get the small order of fries, if they offer that, if it's more fast food, but if they offer that, let's just say I've never been starved because I got a small instead of a large. That's just never been a problem, right? And you stop eating because there's no more, and you don't if you have the bigger size. At least that's what I found to be the case for me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I struggle with eating everything in front of me. And so one thing that I do to try to help prevent that is I'll be eating. And then sometimes if I feel like I'm just eating for the sake of finishing, I'll kind of take a step back and I'll ask myself, what would happen if I just stopped eating right now? And if my answer is I'm fine, then I'll just kind of push my plate away. And I might sit there for another minute or so, mostly because my girlfriend's a very slow eater, so I have to wait for her to finish anyway. And then if I after 5 minutes I'm hungry again, I might nibble at it. But I always kind of like push my plate away to do that mind body scan and assess how things are going. And a lot of times, and I'm sure you just realize, you'll be fuller before maybe you finish your meal. And so that's something that has been a light bulb moment for me and other clients, and like you said. And so it's a great way to again kind of limit calories without actually changing huge behaviors or food,
and it works.
Food choices. Yeah. So our main goal is obviously to lose weight and get healthier. But I think a main driving force was the JETPACK, or as you call it, would you call it a jet suit?
I would call that a flying force, not a driving force. But anyway, just yeah.
Absolutely. The main flying force was the jet suit. So talk to me about what we did in preparation for that. Because I know obviously this is a unique goal, but it was really just wrapped in, Ironman wrapping paper. But really the goals were to improve strength, improve endurance, and to lose weight. So what did we do to help achieve those goals?
Well, we did, we worked through an agenda to be able to be successful, track and all those different kind of things. And one of the things that was more unique with this type of an experience is I had an idea what the suit weighed. And I was worried about endurance too, because, you've got to stand up and walk around a little bit in it. And it proves, and I've proven once you're in the air, you don't feel it, but you're not in the air the whole time. So the solution is either I never land, which probably isn't a good solution. But the other one was to sit down. I do cosplay and I have an old suit of armor. And you and I'd kind of come up with a creative approach of that it's about the same weight as the jet suit. So I would wear that around, and other than everybody at the grocery store looking at me strange when I was doing my shopping in it, I didn't do that. But anyway, but other than something like that, it actually did start to kind of give an idea, not only as far as progress goes, but helped get to that. And the first couple of times I did it, 10, 15 minutes in, it's like, okay, I'm feeling this, it's time to take it off. And by the end of 3, 4 months in, you could feel the weight of it, but it wasn't anything like that at all. It was just, okay, we're going to go do this now. And I really didn't have a point. I don't know, what did we do, like 45 minutes or something, I think, at the end there. But I take it off because we were at the end of the time, but not because I was going to flop over if I didn't. So that was an interesting thing. And I think what comes out of that for me is coming up with creative ways to do what needs to be done that works for somebody individually is something that your plan does pretty well because it's not locked in anything. And for me, that one item right there really kind of helped out a little bit. Plus, I got to walk around in a suit of armor for 45 minutes every week and had a reason for it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, like you said, we didn't really do it for that long. It was like, I think we did it every Sunday just to kind of assess progress as like a proxy.
Yeah, it was once a
measure
week
for
for like 6 weeks or something. It wasn't the full time either.
Yeah. No, and that was the thing. It was you kept going way over the amount of time that you thought you needed. And so it was like, this isn't my limiting factor anymore, so we can just kind of stop doing it. But it was a good measure of progress because, like you said, in those 6 weeks or 2 months or so, we saw some pretty good success. And so how did we increase or improve the overall strength and endurance? We talked about weight loss with nutrition, but with strength and endurance, we created workout routines. So let's talk a little bit about that and how that fit into your schedule.
Yeah, and that was actually, we actually changed that going along too, based on kind of where we needed to start and where we needed to end up. But yeah, there was a couple of different things. One thing I've done in life is swimming, so we worked that into it quite well, and that was a lot of fun to be able to do. But the other part of it for, I don't know if I'd call it strength training, it was more toning up that I needed to do than anything. Was to put together some stuff that was workable and fun with that. One of the ones was I think you called it the Bandit Encounter. And this was something that was a lot of fun that for us gamers works really well. And you roll the dice and the dice come up with what you're going to do that day. And there's a chart that goes along with it and gives the workout. And that was a lot of fun. I actually still do it, even though we're not formally scheduled for it, but it's something I can do at home when I have time and that works quite well, And then from a more formal standpoint, we put together some specific, when you go to the gym, you do this, you start here, go here, see what this is, do evaluations, all that kind of a thing. And that was part of it. And that worked quite well as well. And then the software you have allowed you to log and track and all of that. And from that standpoint, I had a lot of benefit there. And it was also kind of nice because since we were able to touch base fairly often, is to be able to adjust that accordingly and figure out what works and what doesn't, or in my case, kind of increasing what I was doing a little bit because it was very quickly getting to a point where I'd go through a workout and it was like a walk in the park, which is a good thing. That's what you want. But being able to adjust that and being able to improve it at a rate that wasn't overwhelming and also really wasn't underwhelming either, it was where it needed to be, helped.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we really try to do is make sure the programs kind of grow organically, right? So a lot of other coaches will say, all right, for the first 2 weeks, we're going to do this, really build the foundation. Then the next 2 weeks, we're going to focus on hypertrophy. Then the next, we're going to focus on strength training, which looks really good on Excel or Google Sheets, but it doesn't really apply well in real life. And so as you've noticed, you've had a lot of like trips, unexpected vacations, etc. And so we need to have a program that fits that and going at an organic rate to where we are accelerating at what feels right, keeps people on the rails and without completely falling off.
I think that to just look at that methodology, the difference between a rigid schedule like what you were explaining that others might do and having one that we could work into a lifestyle like what we did is the difference between success and failure, because you can't hold to the other one sometimes. And especially like you say, my lifestyle with just work and everything, I'm constantly having schedule changes. I don't necessarily have a consistent, this is what I do all the time type schedule. I wish I did, but I don't. So when you get off the rails from some of these other plans, you can't get back on very easily. So it kind of just goes by the wayside. This was flexible enough to be able to account for that and give the ability to adjust where it was needed and be able to continue to go and see improvement, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah, and we've progressed quite a bit from a few workouts at home to now we're going to the gym 4 days a week plus an additional 5th day to swim.
Yeah. Yeah, if I had attempted that a year ago, I think I would have ended up in the emergency room. So it's,
Yep. Yeah, and we just recently talked about how you thought like a year ago that the flight suit was more or less a pipe dream, and now it's very much a reality.
Yeah. Well, the idea of being able to do something like that, I just wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't have gone because it would have kind of been embarrassing. Did I technically fit into the weight requirement? Well, initially, no, but even afterwards, I think the weight limit is 240 pounds. And above that, it's just not safe. But even at 240 pounds, which we were down to a month into this, it still I wouldn't have had the energy. I might have technically been able to do it, but there's the other part of it that if you're going to be absolutely exhausted after the first 5 minutes, that's not fun either, So, and I do have to say, I've seen continued improvement. It's been about 4 months between the first time and the second time I've been able to do this. And the first time I was able to handle it after everything we did, it worked, but I was still absolutely exhausted. The next day of that, I was in my hotel room and you want to go out? No, I don't want to do anything. I am going to sit here and, type of a thing to recover. But I made it, but it still was uncomfortable. Now, this last time I did it, I didn't have that. I mean, I felt it. I certainly felt like a good workout. The thing's heavy and stuff. But I even split the training into 2 days, thinking it would be a little easier to do it that way. And instead of 2 half days, it ended up becoming a day and a half, just the kind of the way it worked out, which was great. And I was able to handle it, no problem, and getting through all of this, the second day of training, I actually flew for the first time, which was an amazing feeling. I don't know if I can give you credit for being completely weightless on that, but it's certainly part of it.
Well, I'll say all the work you put in for over the last 8 months or so has definitely helped improve those strength.
It's helped make it even possible is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, because I know you said a big part of it's muscle memory, so obviously you're going to be playing into that, but also having the strength and endurance to be able to navigate or manipulate the flight suit helps.
Yeah, it does. And, a big part of that is you're basically pushing air against the ground. I mean, there's more to it, and anybody that knows this will yell at me for describing it that way, but that's a big part of it. But you have to have the strength to be able to deal with controlling 1,500 horsepower. It's 7 turbines. You got 4 of them in your hands. It's like, this is, one turbine exceeds the power of most cars. So there is a certain amount of having the strength to do it, and there's a lot of, they've designed this in such a way that it works, which is also amazing. But those two things together have made it actually possible,
Yeah, absolutely. And so kind of throughout the journey, obviously we kind of evolved things and you mentioned it, but did you ever feel overwhelmed at kind of what we planned with the workouts, the nutrition, and all of the things that we had together, like the program as a whole?
Initially, when we started, I was maybe a little bit skeptical, but that would be the most that I would say is it's like, okay, can I do this? And there's nothing to do with you or the program. It was just my past history with these things. And I did have to have the discipline to do what we said to do. That was certainly part of it. But once I got into it about the first week and kind of started getting into the swing of things a little bit, even just in the beginning, then it wasn't at all, because the stuff worked. It was common sense. It wasn't, and another thing I felt like too, when I was a week into it, I was actually doing what I needed to, which was also a first from some of the other plans and things that I've tried over the years. And we get to the first weekend, it's like, okay, this is going to be good. And then I stepped on the scale and it's like, oh, something's going right here. So.
Yep. I know when we've had our check-in calls, you kept saying how like shocked you were that this is working, that you're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Well, the other part of this too, in the past, when I have lost a little weight, I always end up gaining it back. And that was a problem too. So the other shoe dropping is like, okay, well, this is nice, but is this going to be any kind of long-lived thing? And it turns out it is. I've found that I've had a little bit of that when I've gone and flown. I'm usually about 5 pounds lighter when I get back, and then I do tend to gain that back, but I've stayed within that range, which has put me down now 50 pounds, even considering that. And, the next step I'm going to need to go into is I want to lose a little bit more, which is now completely doable. That's the other thing, is the confidence this builds. It's like, I know I can do it. And it's just a matter of, like you and I said, we've checked in again and putting together a process to make that happen. And what funny thing about it is it's like the next 20 pounds, I think, is going to be a lot easier than the 50, just because I know what to do. And it's a matter of making sure I sit into those circumstances. And the other thing that I would add to this too is, you were talking about busy over the holidays, and my birthday's in the fall, and there are times that you cannot always follow a diet, especially when somebody puts a giant, wonderful handmade cheesecake in front of you or something like that. It's so there have been some times where that has happened with holiday meals and these different type of things. And yeah, at the end of that, you might see a little bit of a weight gain, but as long as you stick to it, it goes away within a day or two. It's not a big deal, really. And it certainly does not get back to wherever I was. I will never be that heavy again, just because I know what to do about it now. And I also know how to watch for it. So if something really bad did happen, you'd catch it long before it really became a problem too. But like I say, at the end of the day, I think you do a couple of things. You have something that it is very usable and something that's very workable and very common sense. But there's also a confidence part of it that the other plans didn't put together, which is also really helpful.
That's good. That's good because a big part of what I try to do is instill that confidence. And a big part of that is just getting you to see results and doing something that's appropriate. Because a lot of coaches miss the mark by having you do too much all at once.
Yeah, no, this, like I say, at the end of the day, to sum it up, this worked. It's continuing to work, and I've met the goals. In fact, I've exceeded them, and it's doing quite well. And I think it's also taken something that I was, a dream to be able to do. It's changing that a little bit because it's looking like I might be actually able to be a little more regularly involved in this. I would not have thought I would have gone for a second training, as a for example, when we started putting all this together.
Okay. Nice. Nice. Yeah. When we first talked, I think your goal was 220 or 225. And now you're
Yeah,
talking about going down to 180 and how you
yeah.
said that's even going to be an easily attainable goal.
Easier. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's easy like a walk in the park, but it's doable and it's going to be easier. And yeah, so I'm sitting around 200 now, with 225 being my goal. I mean, so it's more than double what we originally hoped for. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been crushing it too. And I know we talked about how having that flexible, adaptable approach has been helping, but you're even going and like going to the gym more consistently. And one thing that I do want to celebrate is during the busy chaos that has been pretty much your whole winter, you might not have been tracking your calories, but you've been on such a consistent routine that you've been able to just be mindful of what you're eating without necessarily having to log it all into the app and still kind of hovering around that maintenance. And that's kind of been our goal for the last 2 months or so. And you've been doing a really good job with it without tracking your calories. So that really helps reduce that risk of rebounding because if you lose or if you don't use one of those tools, it's kind of like you don't use it, you lose it type of thing. That's when a lot of people will falter, especially during the holidays. They're like, I'm just going to eat whatever I want. They go back to the eating patterns that they had prior, and then they shoot up, regaining maybe more weight than what they actually initially lost. And you were able to kind of hover around that same plus or minus 5 pounds. And that alone is a huge victory.
Yeah, and again, it's learning what to do. I mean, the software helps. It really does. And I'm going to be better about logging. I need to do that because I find that as is actually very beneficial. But it got to a point where it was just so busy, I kind of got out of the habit of logging, but I didn't get out of the habit of eating correctly and exercising. So that's how that worked.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we're kind of shifting gears here, maybe within the next month or so to hit the gas a little bit more. We'll be working out a little bit more consistently, tracking the meals more. And so then we'll be progressing instead of shifting out of that maintenance phase, which we've been in for the last few months.
No, absolutely. I'm just looking forward to what this next year brings. And to sum this up, for anybody that's having trouble with weight loss, I'm a testament. It works. It works quite well. Yeah, you have to have a little discipline, and you probably have a goal and those type of things. But it is possible, even if it hasn't been possible in the past, because I've done it. I mean, it's just a matter of looking at it from that standpoint.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's a good way to end it. And even if your goal isn't to fly a jet suit, you can still see good progress.
Although I highly recommend it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You might have a bit of an ulterior motive there with being potentially part of the team. So, cool. Any other final remarks? Anything that you want to say that you haven't said to maybe somebody was in that skeptical spot in the beginning?
I think just the thing is try it, give it another shot, because it is possible. It was possible for me to deal with this, and which means it's pretty much possible for anybody because I had a lot of trouble dealing with diet and weight. And this is the first one that's worked, and it's continuing to work. It's easy to do. It's a good mindset. And I will tell you, outside of the jet suit, just day-to-day activities, I feel so much better, more energy, more stamina. It's like I've de-aged 10 years in some ways, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I know we talked about just recently how you start to feel it that you need to get some extra movement in because you start feeling that sluggish. And it's probably kind of a stark contrast. You know how they this is gonna be a side tangent. You know how they have the hero's story, the hero's journey, which is the name
Right.
of my program. How at the end of the story, there's always the hero always returns back to the beginning to show the growth contrast, and that's probably what your body is saying. Hey, look, we haven't worked out in a couple days. We're starting to feel sluggish and stuff like that, which is probably a stark reminder of where you were 100% of the time, 8 to 10 months ago. And so that's a good kind of reminder of, hey, let's kind of keep this momentum going.
I think one of the other things too is being a programmer, I sit a lot and I was having trouble, remembering you get up and move. And they say many ways the sitting is the new smoking. It's bad for you. And I find from this standpoint too, is not only do I remember to kind of get up and just walk around a little bit and that kind of stuff, it makes me feel better to do it. And that's a part of that too. So yeah, at the end of the day, you do retrain yourself, you think differently, and you're able to have success and you're able to just be whatever your goal is, whether it's to hover literally or not, is a huge change in lifestyle that is much healthier and just much better for you.
Yeah, and it sounds like pretty sustainable.
Yep. And that's the key. At the end of the day, I don't know. We're going to be going on a year pretty soon. I have not bounced back, and I am certainly not going to gain back 50 pounds between now and March.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's something I won't let happen. So, nor will you. Nor will you.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Awesome, awesome, Bill. Well, awesome job. Obviously, you've been crushing it for the last 8 to 9 months or so, and obviously, like you said, we have not a long ways to go, but we definitely have some work to be done to hit that new goal. Actually, it's like a new goal, because your goal after 225 was 200, which we hit that. Now we want to lose another 20, and then I think that'll probably be the safe space for a little bit. And so we'll continue to crush it. And yeah,
there you are. It works. It works well. And believe me, I'm a happy camper.
Good deal. Well, awesome, Bill. Again, I appreciate it, and let's just keep crushing it.
Absolutely. Onward and upward.
Yeah, exactly.